Good to have you with us this morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Stephen Romo in for Savannah Sellers today.
We begin this morning with the president of El Salvador's headline-making visit to the White House yesterday. President Nayib Bukele met with President Trump in the Oval Office. There he told reporters he would not return Kilmar Abrego Garcia, Maryland man the Justice Department says was mistakenly deported to El Salvador.
How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
Well, the United States has sent hundreds of deportees to El Salvador, Bukele incarcerating them in a notorious mega prison there. Among them is Abrego Garcia. A Justice Department prosecutor said he was deported because of an administrative error. But the Trump administration accuses Abrego Garcia of being a member of MS-13, a violent gang the White House has designated as a foreign terrorist organization. His family denies this, and Abrego Garcia has never been charged criminally. We'll speak with an NBC News legal analyst, Danny Savalos, here on the legal issues involved in all of this. But first, let's get to White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard, who joins us from Washington with the latest on this. Vaughn, good morning to you. So walk us through the Trump administration meeting with El Salvador's President Bukele yesterday and how Abrego Garcia is responding to their comments.
Right, I'll let Danny get into the legal there because there's a lot of legalese to this here. But essentially yesterday, the question coming into this meeting with the El Salvador President Bukele was whether the United States, whether the White House, whether President Trump would request Kilmar Abrego Garcia be returned to United States custody, as last week the Supreme Court directed the White House to, quote, facilitate Abrego Garcia's return to the United States. Of course, Kilmar Abrego Garcia was one of hundreds that were deported to the mega prison system here, and it has caused a lot of concern about the lack of judicial review before sending Abrego Garcia overseas to a mega prison with a long history of human rights abuses and, frankly, a prison system that is not mere that of the standards that the United States uses to imprison and incarcerate individuals who have been convicted of crimes here in the U.S. And so that is where Abrego Garcia's wife yesterday outside the White House said that the Bukele and Trump continue to play political games. And it was just notable there inside of the Oval Office yesterday, the fact that the Attorney General, the Vice President, the Secretary of State, nor the President, all with Bukele sitting right there, did not make the explicit request to follow the orders of the Supreme Court and have him returned. Instead, you heard there Bukele suggesting, well, he can't do that because he would be then sending him back to the United States when he is initially a citizen of El Salvador.
So, Vaughn, let's listen to some of what Trump was heard saying to Bukele on an unofficial live stream by the Salvadorian Presidential Party. It was about deporting more people, appearing to include American citizens.
Criminals next. Yeah. I said, homegrown's are next. The homegrown's built. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right.
Critics have pointed out that is probably highly illegal there, but the two leaders appear very close, joking and laughing. What does this alliance with El Salvador mean for Trump's deportation ambitions? Were any specific agreements reached?
Right. He was suggesting sending homegrown or U.S.-born citizens to El Salvador to be imprisoned. And the president went on to say that these would be violent criminals. Yet, of course, that is outside the norm for the U.S. to send away U.S. citizens outside of the country. And this comes at a time in which he is essentially acting as an affront to the Supreme Court's request to have Abrego Garcia, a non-U.S. citizen who has legal status in the U.S., be returned here. And so there's a lot of serious questions as to the extent that in the scenario that the Trump administration were to try to deport citizens to El Salvador, would they then, like they're doing with Abrego Garcia, throw their hands up in the air? And as the deputy chief of staff said yesterday, suggested it would be arrogant to think that they have any control over what happens in a sovereign territory, a sovereign country like El Salvador. Effectively, once somebody is sent outside of the U.S. borders, the administration is no longer responsible.
Hey, Vaughn, it was fascinating to watch that meeting unfold in the Oval Office yesterday. Bukele has called himself the world's coolest dictator. What has the reaction been like from Washington about this visit?
Right. I actually wanted to let you listen to Senator Chris Van Hollen, a Democrat out of Maryland, who made the case that if he didn't get the chance to meet with Bukele himself yesterday, that he would go to El Salvador and go and seek to have access to the prison. I want to let you listen to a little bit of Senator Van Hollen.
This is unsustainable. I mean, the Trump administration's position, in my view, is absolutely unsustainable, as is the position of the president of El Salvador. They are clearly just snubbing their nose at the courts, including the Supreme Court.
And Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, in a statement, wrote, quote, President Bukele's comment today is pure nonsense. The law is clear. Due process was grossly violated. A threat to one is a threat to all. Clearly, the president of the United States sees a close partner in Bukele, who, as you noted, has called himself the coolest dictator in the world. Guys?
All right, Vaughn Hilliard, thanks so much.
Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos. Danny, good morning. So as we've established, last week the Supreme Court ordered the Trump administration to facilitate his return. The Trump administration appears to be saying, well, it doesn't need to initiate the return, it would just need to help. Pam Bondi said this recently. Let's listen.
That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
All right, what does the law say here? Are we in sort of untested territory?
Joe, as you know, I hate to say I told you so, but play my I told you so music, because I said this 2 or 3 days ago when the order came out. The order from the Supreme Court is a kind of Rorschach test. You know those things where you might see a butterfly, I see something else. And I knew when it came out that the Trump administration would read that exact same Supreme Court order as favorable to them. And here's why. I think a lot of confusion results from the fact that one attorney in the DOJ did argue, or at least admit, that Garcia was deported as a result of an administrative error. And that's true. But that same attorney's been put on administrative leave. Clearly, the Trump administration doesn't even back that position. And I knew from the language of the order, which essentially said it sent the case back down to the district court to issue an order consistent with the Supreme Court's directive to not exceed its power, and within the scope of its power to not exceed, whether or not it can force the executive branch to do things that a court can't force it to do. Once I read that, I knew the Trump administration is going to declare victory and say, the Supreme Court has essentially said to the district court, it cannot order us to bring Garcia back. You can read the order yourself, and you can see the wiggle room on both sides.
Yeah, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, actually had something to say about this yesterday. We can listen to that.
The foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
So we've been hearing about this potential showdown between the executive and the courts for quite some time now. Is the Trump administration just defying this order? Can you look at it that way at all?
You can, but you can also say that the Trump administration does not believe they're defying the order. They read the Supreme Court's order as telling the district court to only order the Trump administration to do what the district court can order it to do. And you heard Marco Rubio toe the party line, which is that telling the administration, the executive branch, how to conduct foreign relations is outside the Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 powers and the interplay of those powers. That is something reserved to the executive branch and the executive branch alone. So they will continue to defy it, but folks on the left will call it defiance. I promise you, the Trump administration does not believe they are defying any court orders at this point, other than ones they deem unlawful.
So El Salvador won't send him back. The Trump administration clearly not trying to get him back. What are the next legal steps here?
Probably we're going to see contempt. And what I suspect is every federal judge involved, they'll probably never admit it, really doesn't want to hold anyone in contempt, because then you get into the incredibly thorny issue of whose fault is this, right? Everybody has a defense that I was just following orders except one person, the person at the top, Donald Trump. So all of these judges are probably hopping mad, whether it's the Supreme Court on down to the district court. There are judges who think this is wrong. The Trump administration is defying an order. But what do you do about it? Who do you hold in contempt? That is probably the next step. But you can see in the administration's filings just in the last day or so, they continue to interpret the Supreme Court's order as allowing them to do exactly what they're doing now, which folks are calling defiance, but they call acting consistently with the Constitution.
All right. Danny Savalos, thank you so much.
Well, some Americans are feeling tariff whiplash this morning after President Trump signaled that he's planning for new tariffs, this time on pharmaceutical drugs and chips for electronics. It comes less than a week after he paused the tariffs that would have affected some of those same electronics. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell has the details.
As markets and manufacturers brace for more turbulence, what looked like a reprieve from some tariffs is now being cast by the White House as a reclassification.
I don't want to hurt anybody, but the end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country.
The White House had announced this weekend that consumer electronics, from smartphones to flat screens, as well as semiconductor components, would be exempt from reciprocal tariffs. But then officials said those goods would face a different category of tariffs under an authority linked to national security. Pressed about exemptions for cell phones, the president kept his options open.
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible.
The White House says despite the appearance of whiplash, there is no mixed message.
I think that it all has been very carefully designed and makes a good deal of sense.
Shoppers, wary that tariffs could drive up prices, are weighing when to buy.
I would definitely do everything now. Anything that I would purchase right now would be a new phone, new television, mainly electronics.
I didn't really think I needed an upgrade. Again, with the uncertainty of these tariffs and the way the economy is moving, I'd rather just keep the $2,800 that I spent on the laptop.
With most toys produced in China facing the steepest of tariffs, some small business owners say swings in tariff policy are not child's play for their bottom line.
Uncertainty is not a way to run a business, and uncertainty certainly is not a way to run a government.
Our thanks to Kelly O'Donnell for that report. The White House has said that one of the reasons for the tariffs is to bring manufacturing back to the United States. Now, tech company NVIDIA announced plans to start making AI supercomputer chips here for the very first time.
The suspect accused in Sunday's arson attack on Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence has been denied bail. 38-year-old Cody Balmer was arraigned last night on charges including terrorism and attempted homicide. Balmer is accused of climbing a fence, breaking windows, and throwing Molotov cocktails into the house as Shapiro and his family slept inside. Court documents say Balmer harbored a hatred toward Shapiro. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster has the latest.
Good morning. And that suspect, Cody Balmer, 38-year-old mechanic, he was in front of a judge yesterday for his arraignment, and the judge denied his bail. So he'll be behind bars for this foreseeable future. But yesterday, we really got a clear picture of the early phases of this investigation and what police have been able to learn from these early phases. We know that they say that Balmer confessed to them. He turned himself in on Sunday. He told them that, according to court documents, that he harbored hatred for Governor Shapiro, and he walked about an hour from his home to the governor's residence that you see behind me. It was here. He was wearing a black jacket, wearing black boots, and carrying a small bag when he hopped over the fence for the governor's mansion that surrounds the entire perimeter of the building, and that's when he used the hammer to break windows and deployed at least 2 Molotov cocktails inside, causing that massive fire. Now, I spoke to the fire chief yesterday, and he is calling this man a domestic terrorist. He said to reporters that this blaze came dangerously close to becoming a much more serious tragedy, essentially because of a set of doors blocking off and separating the main ballroom from the grand staircase that leads up to the governor's residence where he was with his family and his guests. Because those main doors were closed, that prevented this from becoming a much more serious tragedy. That, of course, will become evidence in the case against Balmer, who we know will appear before a judge on April 23rd. Again, this is something that people are watching very closely. We heard from Governor Shapiro. He condemned any acts of political violence. Yesterday, we heard from President Trump calling this guy essentially a psycho. From both sides of the aisle, you're hearing condemnation for what took place here. The governor and his family are safe, but of course, clearly shaken up as we've been watching those dump trucks and movement inside the residence of the Pennsylvania governor early this morning. Back to you.
All right, Shaq, thank you. Well, an earthquake in Southern California left some people rattled on Monday. It was a 5.2 magnitude quake, which struck outside of San Diego. A series of aftershocks then shook the region for several more hours, with some stronger than a magnitude 3.0. But they didn't appear to cause any major damage. NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin has more.
A powerful 5.2 magnitude earthquake rocking Southern California.
San Diego must have been like a 5 point something. Whoa, my God, that was huge.
Shaking buildings and sending residents scrambling. This mother grabbing her baby from a playpen, rushing outdoors to safety. A baby monitor capturing this 11-month-old child rattled in her crib. In a classroom, students sheltering under their desks with their teacher.
Thank you. We need to be safe with our head.
The earthquake hitting just after 10 a.m. local time. The epicenter near Julian, California, roughly 40 miles northeast of San Diego. Officials say no immediate reports of injuries, but the incident still jarring.
Oh my God. That was so scary.
This woman who took cover in her office in downtown San Diego telling us the quake triggered her memories of similar tremors back home in Mexico City. As the shuddering stopped in Southern California, residents taking stock of the aftermath. Cracks in a patio in Chula Vista widening. A highway left littered with rocks in Santa Isabel.
Is everywhere.
This liquor store manager in Julian documenting the damage after the quake shook bottles off his shelves.
Glass falling. Whiskey, scotch, an assortment of different bottles. First time in 15 years I felt this kind of earthquake here. So it was definitely one for the books.
Governor Gavin Newsom posting on X saying he's been briefed on the quake. His team's now assessing if emergency response is needed. Dana Griffin, NBC News.
And spring decidedly not in the air for parts of the country this morning.
NBC meteorologist Angie Lassman joins us now talking about some winter weather in the Great Lakes, Angie.
Yes, indeed, guys. The calendar says April, but the weather forecast says, I don't know, February, with some of these snow showers lasting for our friends across the Great Lakes and some rain, too. You can see some of that spread across parts of the Northeast throughout the morning hours. Washington, D.C. has been dealing with some of the shower activity, and that's kind of the setup here as we get through the rest of our day. We'll still see some of these snow showers swirling along the Great Lakes. The system that's bringing this to us is going to continue to kick to the east, but we'll still have some of the snow shower activity across the interior areas of the Northeast and some showers and thunderstorms across parts of the Northeast by this afternoon. Temperature-wise, we are also dealing with delayed spring-like temperatures across the east. We've still got the 50s in Indianapolis. We've got the 40s for Green Bay, upper 60s for Memphis. But across this region, anywhere from 5 to 15 degrees below normal. A very different story if you look west of the Rockies, specifically places like Phoenix, ending up into the mid-90s again today. It was a warm weekend for them. We're taking that right into the next couple of days, too. Temperatures into parts of the northern plains into the 70s this afternoon. So feeling much like spring and even late spring across that region. But it's going to take us a little longer to get parts of the east feeling like that. We've still got the 50s tomorrow in Pittsburgh and New York City. Richmond ending up into the mid-60s, along with Knoxville topping out at 66 degrees tomorrow. And then that's when the good news starts to come if you're looking for some of these warmer temperatures. We go from the 50s on Thursday in Detroit to the low 70s rather on Friday. We've got the upper 70s on Friday in Cincinnati. And heading into the weekend, Baltimore, you get the 70s on Friday, but then the 80s on Saturday. We've got a similar story across parts of the Northeast, places like Boston ending up into those low 70s by the time the weekend rolls around. And we've still got the 80s on tap into the weekend for places like Charlotte. Meanwhile, your Thursday and Friday could see some of those stronger storms developing. Here's one spot that we're expecting on Thursday. Some strong wind gusts, some hail right in the center of the country, specifically Des Moines, going to be in the bullseye of that risk area for Thursday. And then looking ahead to Friday, we've got more of that stretched from Michigan to Texas with 38 million people under that severe threat. So this is giving spring a little bit, but temperatures not so much.
Not the part of spring we like.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thanks, Angie. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.